the pain sometimes becomes an advantage, because when all the adrenaline rushes in, I use that pain to express the music.
This is Unitopia, and you're watching LiveProg. Mark Trueack, welcome. How are you doing?
Thank you. And thank you. And well, it wasn't that long ago that I was actually in your wonderful country, in 2023, actually. And it was emotional for both Sean and I, really, being the only two members from this new lineup that experienced the wonderful audience that we had that night. And of course, it happened all over again, and it was just electric. And of course, having Chester was a bit of a draw card as well. So, and he, in turn, like me, both of us have been suffering all the elements of bad health. I don't know if you knew this, Marcel, but as far back as 99, I think, when I started having all these terrible problems with my bad back, it shows on the one night in Europe, because you can see I'm hunching, suffering a lot of pain, but the pain sometimes becomes an advantage, because when all the adrenaline rushes in, I use that pain to express the music, and it comes out quite well. I was in a bit of a deeper problem this last tour, and I didn't want to sit on a chair. I wanted to sit on a stool, so that I was sort of semi-standing. And it was a few of the venues had high stools, which was good, but some didn't. In fact, the funny moment in Paris, or I should say in France, they put a chair on top of a box so that I was up higher, and it just looked so odd. But anyway, that's not what I'm here to talk about. I just wanted to let you know that obviously the Seven Chambers album is about medical problems. Both Sean and I had heart attacks. I had cancer. I had kidney problems, and I don't drink or smoke. So I surfed for most of my life, played football, and you'd think I was going to be okay in the future, but it was all hereditary. So it made it very difficult. Still thinking that I could still make music. And Sean was scared and shocked when he had his heart attack as well. And of course, John's a doctor at the highest level. John Greenwood, if you haven't listened to any of his solo stuff, he's an incredibly good musician, but he's a genius on the medical world. He designed a skin technology. He's working on type 1 diabetes, and in between theatre, he would come into his office and play his guitar. He'd always have his guitar in the hospital, and he would play. And his dream was to someday play music live, and his dream came through me and Sean. So that was a wonderful sort of transition. And then we grew the band from there, and I'd already been working with Steve Unruh with UPF, and so that was an instant thing. Wow, Steve's a multi-player, a brilliant player.
I noticed that when I had a chance to already see the material on the upcoming live Blu-ray.
Yes.
And I was watching, and I saw Steve, and I was like, man, he does so many things.
Yeah.
It's incredible.
Well, Sean wasn't sure initially. He knew how good Steve was, because he'd you know, during our little break, he watched what I was doing with UPF, and he was actually quite shocked and surprised. Probably surprised more than shocked. Shock's probably not the right word. Surprised, definitely. And you know, we didn't have a rhythm section. We tried a couple of people locally. We didn't want to go back to where we were. We wanted something fresh and new. We were going to go with Simon Phillips. We were thinking about that. And then John said, "Oh, I've got Chester on my wiki." And I go, "Oh, okay, talk to Chester." And Chester was very open and said, "Yep, no problems." And then Chester said, "Well, who have you got playing bass?" He says, "No one at the moment." He says, "I'll organise Alfonso Johnson." And so the next thing you know, we've got Alfonso Johnson. But unfortunately, as you would see on the Alive and Kicking, Alfonso couldn't come on the tour because he'd already pre-booked his a lot of gigs. He's prolific when he plays out live. So I was already working with Don on several projects, and I said, we've got to get Don, because Don's a very, very talented guy. And he's a guy that's played with Elvis Presley. I mean,
Yeah, he did.
how many people can you talk to who have played with
Not a
Elvis
lot.
Presley?
Yeah.
So, you know, I miss my good friend Matt Williams. Matt appeared on all 3 UPF albums, but Matt had a lot of things going on. He wanted to do his blues thing, and, you know, he was focused on that. And we did have a fairly longish break. What got us back together was basically, I got a phone call from Sean, it would have been 2016, beginning of 2016. Sean was saying, because we own the building together, the studio building, and we had some problems with tenants, and he needed some support, and he didn't think I was going to pick up the phone. Because when we broke away, it wasn't ugly or anything like that. It was just very sad, and it was all for the wrong reasons. But in saying that, things happen for a reason. We both went off and did our things. We took the Unitopia songs that we were going to release for Turn Left, Turn Right. I put it on UPF's first album, and he put it on Southern Empire. And even now, Sean talks about we should release that double album as a bootleg. And I said, no way. We've already got them out there in UPF formats and Southern Empire formats. Anyway, so with the Alive and Kicking, we knew we wanted to do another video. And as you know, I really like John Vai, and I like the way he goes about it. He's very professional, and he's done an extraordinary job, as he always does. The tour was not a full-blown out tour. It was a promotional tour for Seven Chambers. We chose not to do too many back catalogue. We wanted to really promote the album virtually almost the same way we did one night, where we did the majority of Artificial on that tour. But I think the next tour, if all goes well, 2026, will be a bigger one, and we'll certainly look at doing songs that we've not done before, and shall I say, some of the new songs from the upcoming new album from Unitopia.
Ah. I was a bit curious to that. I mean, because a lot has happened, and I'm really happy that you guys came back. I kind of missed the Seven Chambers album because I kind of moved away from the progressive rock world, and I came back at the end of 2023, so I just missed it.
Yeah.
But what I heard from it sounds really happy, and what I understand is that it's a very personal album for you guys, since you know it deals with a lot of personal things. Is that also the reason why you got back together as Unitopia?
Sean and I were in 2016 when we did finally get good. Steve Hackett was one of the reasons we sort of started talking because he was about to tour Australia, and he wasn't going to bring his band with him. He was going to pick up a band in Australia because it would have been cheaper for the promoter and everything like that. And that nearly happened. And Sean said to me, one of the other things apart from the tennis, he said, you know, I've spoken to Steve, and he said, and I said, about what? And he said, about possibly you singing and me playing keys on a tour around Australia and New Zealand. And I said, oh, okay. So we talked, and then I got in touch with Steve just to find out a little bit more. And then that conversation went, oh, the promoter's changed his mind, and he was Steve was upset because he stuffed him around a little bit, the promoter, because he told us that we'd be doing it. And then he said, look, the promoter's going to pay the money to bring the whole band. And I said, okay. So Steve said, hey, come and be my guest in Melbourne when we come, and blah, blah, blah. And of course, I've been working with him for now 15 years with the 3 albums. He's on all 3 UPF albums. So we did that. We went and saw him, and I spent some time with him alone talking about Loss, the UPF album at that time. And when we got back, we started working on a new song called Dream Complete, which we're going to bring out for the More Than a Dream box set, which came out 2017. And we're invited by Rosfest to go over, but Sean and I didn't want to go out as Unitopia. We wanted to do a bit of something different. So we came out, no, not many people know this, but we did Rosfest under the name Unit DB, which incorporates UPF, Unitopia, Southern Empire, and Resistor. So Steve came out, Daniel came out from Southern Empire, Brody came out from Southern Empire, and we're a 5-piece. And some of that is on the new Garden triple box set, which came out through Prog Rock Essentials. Really, really good recording. Steve engineered it. It sounds fantastic. One day we'll release that whole concert because we've got it, but we've been focusing on other things. So from that, getting back together, doing the Unitopia thing with Dream Complete, we decided that, you know, maybe we could write a little bit more, but we did it very gently. We didn't, you know, live in each other's faces, and so many things was happening. He had the heart attack, I had the heart attack, and it just, you know, we were sort of doing things gently. But then as I mentioned, I brought in John, and I brought in Steve, and then Chester and Alfonso. But now we've got, as you know, I announced early in the week that on the new album we're working on, Don Schiff will be a permanent member of the band, which is great.
Yeah.
And Chester's. We're all writing the tentative title for this album is called 6 to 1. That's all I'm going to say about that. And I can tell you 2 epics have been written, and I've performed and sung on those 2 already. They're 20 minutes long, both of them.
Wow.
And John's finished a 12-minute piece. I'm working on a piece at the moment, which is very epic. And Don's got his song, and Chester's working on his song. So the idea of 6 to 1 is that basically there will probably be 7 or 8 tracks, but the 6 of us are all writing.
Oh, that sounds very good.
Well, before, Marcel, it was just Sean and I writing.
Yeah.
Now we have 6 members writing, which makes it a real band.
Welcome to the essence of mind as it seems, the place known as the garden.
Talking about the tour, you did the tour, and what I picked up in between is that you moved to Thailand, where you are.
Yes, that's
right
where
now.
I am right now. In fact,
right now.
if you can hear any noise in the background,
I am a bit curious.
Noise in the...
I don't hear the noise.
Oh, good, because I've got 2 bands that play every night at my restaurant.
Okay.
I have a restaurant, and my house is on the property I live on a 2.5 acre property in front of a beautiful lake, and I've had flooding for 2 years in a row. It's cost
Yeah.
me a lot of money, and
Yeah.
but I broke up with my wife after 40 years, which was very, very sad. And I moved to Coffin Bay, which is where I'm based, basically, but
Hmm.
I'm a permanent resident here in Thailand as well. I've got a Thai ID card and
Yeah.
license, and so I'm here. Yes, and it's a great place to live.
It's quite a change then. So why did you move to Thailand?
Well, there's always one reason, isn't there? A friend of mine's wife, who's Thai, she had a friend who was running a restaurant and owning this property. She was in trouble financially with the other partner, who is a guy, and he's married with a kid as well. And I decided to write to this girl because I saw her and I melted. She was beautiful, and I thought I want to be with this lady, and but I didn't know if it was going to happen. So on the way back from doing a gig in Chicago with Chester in 2020, the end of 2022 into 23, I dropped in, instead of going to Singapore, I dropped into Thailand to meet her. And we fell in love. I stayed with her for 3 weeks. We went touring across the mountains near Vietnam. It was because we're near Vietnam here in Thailand. We're 75 k's from Laos and 13 hours from Cambodia by car. So yeah, it's a big shift. Many people have said to me, "How the hell did you do it?" But it doesn't take much to uh, when you. I'm very versatile. For most of my life, before I met Cheryl, my wife, my first wife, I was traveling around the world. So it's not unusual for me,
All
really.
right.
I mean, that's why I've got so many stories to tell, because they're all adventures, that's
Yeah.
what I get excited about, if you know what I mean.
You already mentioned the flooding, and you were on tour in well, I think in Europe,
Yes. Yeah.
and
Well,
you got some
yeah.
news. At what point in the tour did you get that news?
Sapatra, which is my future wife's name, she has access for CTV, right, on her phone. And she got a message from the other partner who's back, in Thailand, and said the rain's been coming down, but they've let the floodgates out of one of the dams deeper into on the Mekong River, and the water's rising rapidly, and we watched every day on the video. We could see it, and she could only go on the European part of the tour. So she came back and started helping out when she got back. And I continued on in America, and when we did the second part of the tour in America. So it was devastating. And I started writing some ideas down for a song that maybe I could raise money for. And so I started up a GoFund, which has been really wonderful for the amount of people that actually donated. A fellow called Dave Buchholz, he was amazing. He gave me quite a significant amount of money, and then I also wrote a song with him, which is on the Save Us EP, which is released today. Yes.
Yeah.
um, and but I also Patrick Moraz was playing just before us at Progstock, and we had a conversation. And I said, "Look," I told him what was going on. He said, "Oh, you want me to help you?" And I said, "Yes, I would love if you could play some piano and maybe do an arrangement." He said, "Call me when you get back home." And I go, and that's exactly what happened. Is that when I got back in the middle of October, I rang him 2 weeks later, and we had a jam on the phone. He's playing the piano on the phone and
Phone.
I'm
Okay.
singing. And he says, "What words are these?" And I said, "I'm just making them up as we're going along." And he goes, "Really?" And I goes, "Yes." And so I started writing the ideas down, and then I told him to send the arrangement to my engineer, which was Steve. and that was the birth of that particular song for Save Us.
Yeah, like you mentioned, I mean, the day we're recording this interview is the release of Save Us.
Yeah.
I understood that this is your very first solo work, is it?
Yes, it is. Well, Steve pointed out, he said, well, UPF's your solo as well. And I go, yeah, but I I didn't want to take the accolade. I think United Progressive Fraternity is about, I mean, the first album was basically a Unitopia album, but these other two albums were exactly what I wanted to do. I think it was 2008 when we were doing The Garden, I started to come up with the ideas and I wrote quite a few of the songs with Steve Layton, who appears on all three of the albums. So I decided that I wanted to do this project as a solo, but call it Mark Trueack and Friends, because it's just a small group of friends that have helped out in this album, and it's a mini album. So so it is really intently my first solo under using my name, and we'll go on to the next phase of the next part of that a little bit later. But so I'm very proud of it, and you know, the songs are very personal. Like I like to write personal things, but this one's a lot more personal because it's about, one of the songs is called Reality, and it's about me waking up. What have I done? What am I doing to myself? What am I doing to my family? What have I done to my family? Breaking away. The song What We've Done, which was written by Dave Borchholz, which is the reason why I went with that song, is that could have been easily a UPF song, quite easily. And I thought, when I heard it and the words, I thought, yeah, this is me. And I told Dave, because he wanted me to sing on his album. He's got a version of the same song on his album. And he wanted to pay me for it. And I said, no. And he said, no, but I insist because you've got problems with the restaurant. So he and I are incredibly close now. And this guy in America, he's a very, very lovely guy. So and then I've got the likes of Dave Kersner. And Dave helped me finish off the song which Steve Layton and I wrote many moons ago, but it wasn't what I wanted it to end up to being. It is now where I wanted it to be. And he added these wonderful keyboards. I mean, he's using Tony Banks keyboards. He bought Tony Banks keyboards. If you didn't know that, he did. He bought about 4 or 5 of them. And one of them is on this particular track on So Fragile. So that's a little bit of history for you, bit of Genesis going into the track, because it does sound like Tony Banks as well. Good old Dave. And of course, Dave's releasing his Lamb Lies Down on Broadway album, which is going to be a killer album with all the people on it. So yes, very proud of Save Us, and I think it's going to be good. Just to let you know, back to Unitopia, along with Alive and Kicking, we've also got I can see it in the background there, Artificial.
Yeah, right there.
re-releasing, remastered, remixing, and reimagining a box set.
A box set, okay.
With a brand new song that I wrote last year, which Sean will get stuck into probably by about March, because he's got a lot of commitments with the Fringe Festival, which he does every year. And that's called Losing Our Identity. And it's a very powerful song. And it's about AI, which is basically what Artificial is about as well.
Yeah.
Slowly going underground, treading soft, careful, don't make a sound.
Like I said, as the day we're recording this, Save Us is now being released through Prog Rock Essentials.
Yes.
You're doing a lot with Prog Rock Essentials, am I right?
Well, yeah, well, Mark is been one of the biggest fans. Mark was one of the instigators that got Sean and I back together, along with Melanie, with regards to Rosfest. But we've played, well, I've played a couple of shows at, we call it Monforty Manor. He has many good acts there. You know, he's had Clive Nolan. He's had quite a few people that's come and stayed with him. And we talked about doing a label. I said to him, you know, with all the stuff that you're passionate, you've got your own radio show, you know, you could easily do it. And because he was then on the verge of retiring out of his mainstream job, it virtually, when it all ended there, he just thought, well, I might as well do it. And he loved Unitopia. He came to the show at Summer's End, the first gig we ever did, and he was just blown away. And he has been my friend right from the beginning, from that time. And you know, he's finding it, you know, it's a tough ask to do a label, and there's a lot of work that has to be done. So, you know, but Mark is very strong, and he's very he has good ideas, and he's just learning about the basics of being a label and making sure that the acts are being presented properly. You know, the big labels like Inside Out, we were with Inside Out, and we could have gone down that path to do Seven Chambers, because we owed them a third album. But since Sony come in, Inside Out is not the same label anymore. It's like it's been caught up in all of the, I suppose, what would you call it? The when Inside Out, when they were in those early years, it was a boutique label. Everybody wanted to be on it. Um,
Yeah.
Sony are a very aggressive record label. They have been, even when I was at EMI, we would always have big disputes with Sony, with their bins, putting their CDs in front of, taking other people's boxes away, and they would be aggressive in promoting their music, and nothing's changed. They're still the same. I mean, they're successful because that's the way they are. But to me, I didn't want to go down that path. And we could have gone to GP, and I thought, well, let's give Mark a try, and we all agreed, and we gave it a shot. There's still a lot of work. We know that Seven Chambers hasn't even reached the amount of people that are knowing us now. They still haven't reached all of them. So I suppose the balance of it all is downloading and all that sort of stuff. Physical product is still everybody, in particularly in the prog world, they prefer physical product. I think having physical product to play at home, and then having a USB, which I can tell you, Alive and Kicking actually has a USB, which is great. So both audio and visual. So you know, it's just the nature of the beast. So Mark's, you know, been good, and I signed with him for this album, and probably for the next. I've still got to think about what I'm going to do with that, but we'll talk about that one in a minute. So yeah, prog rock essentials, you know, are building nicely.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. So they're releasing your new EP, Save Us, as of February the 1st. Yeah,
Yes.
you can order it, and it's a very special cause. So I can only urge everyone get a copy, because it's not
Yeah,
only
thanks for that,
helping
Marcel.
Mark, but also it's amazing music. I had a chance to listen to it thanks to you, Mark, and I gotta say it's really beautiful. And of course March 7th, the upcoming Alive and Kicking live CD Blu-ray, and as you mentioned, USB. I was surprised to see it was a USB. I don't see that
Yeah,
Many
we thought
all
we'd
happen a lot.
try.
So
Yeah, we thought we'd try something different. And not when I say we, I mean I know it's been done. Steve Wilson does it. He's even done cassettes. And everybody likes to go back in history sometimes, but um, I think presenting it that way, and I think with Unitopia, the box set, we're not sure about vinyl yet on the box set. I think we will. In fact, I know we will because we released Artificial as a bind as a vinyl, but we only did 300 as a limited orange vinyl, and it did really well. But we didn't include. We managed to get all the songs bar the three extras
mhm.
on the LP, which was really cool. So I think this will be a double, and it will have the new song plus it will have the three bonus tracks that were featured on the digipack on the original release. And there may be a different version. I can tell you that the remaster and the remix that Sean's done on the original album is incredible. Like it's another level. And Sean said because of the technology that was then back in 2010 has changed dramatically
Yeah,
since
definitely.
then. He's you can tell with the music, you can hear it. It's quite incredible. So something to look forward to because it's been out of print for a while. So I think people will get excited about, like they did with the Garden. We'll eventually probably get to the more than a dream on vinyl, and may even do covered mirror on vinyl. We'll see what happens. But so yeah, so that's it. And of course, as I mentioned, we've got the new album coming up, which whether it's the end of this year or early next year, we'll see.
That's quite a few things to look forward to. A lot of music coming our way. But I understood there's even more music coming our way from you.
Yes, there is. Well, I sent you, Ed sent that to me today. That's the front of the new solo jazz album, which is called Journey's Groove, An Adventure in Life.
Yeah.
And this is basically a snapshot of some of the experiences that I've had in my life, both traumatically, fun. I mean, the first track, which is called Go Kart, is quite funky, but it tells a story of being bullied by these kids when I was 6 years old because I didn't have a go kart. They would tease me. And so I went home crying one day, and my father said, "Come with me, son." So I followed him into the shed. And what did I see in front of me? An ironing board with wheels on it. And I just went, "Dad, you can't go out on the road with an ironing board with wheels." He says, "You'll be the king of the mountain." And sure enough, he was right because when I went down the hill, I took out three of the go-karts that were made out of flimsy cardboard. And but my wheels fell off at the very end, but I still won the race. But we
Okay.
changed the wheels a few weeks later with very strong ones, but because these were like laundry trolley wheels, very flimsy and weak. So that song, it's a fun song, but it's a true story. And, making a go-kart out of an ironing board is pretty unique, really. And that was my father. And their experiences of 1969. What's the most famous thing you remember in 69 if you were born anywhere near then? To me, it was the landing of the moon.
I wasn't born then, so
I knew that. I knew
yeah,
that.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
I remember going to school on the Friday because the Monday was the day well, Friday they announced that they're going to do a televised and 69, black and white TVs in Australia. So I remember in the assembly hearing the landing because we didn't have a big screen TV like we've got now. And I thought about it when I wrote it, and I thought I started to research that that there wasn't a gun fired in for the first time ever on the world's, as long as history can tell us, that there was no one killed, and the whole world was watching the landing of the moon on their black and white, or in America they had color TVs quite early. So I told that story, and it affected me to the point where it was the day the earth stood still. And there's a movie called The Day the Earth Stood Still. Well, this is almost telling that same thing. It's all to do with space and science fiction, but coming true.
Radiation therapy can use these high-dose X-rays prior to surgery to shrink tumors. Surgery, the most common treatment. Lymph node dissection removes lymph nodes in the neck that contain cancer.
So each song represents a time period, and what I've tried to do is incorporate the type of music that was playing in that time. Like Go-Kart, it was that jazzy, funky sort of sound coming through in the 50s and in the early 60s. Across the Ocean has that Beatles sort of feel, because there's a little cliche Ticket to Ride on there. And if you hear it, you soon hear a lot of little Easter eggs that you'll hear. That Perfect Day, if you play that after we've hung up, you'll hear Unitopia on that track. I don't know if you caught it straight away, but you would hear it.
I didn't got it straight away, so I really need to go back and listen to it a bit more. I mean, I listened to the whole record, and I gotta say, it sounds different from what I'm normally used to hear from you, but it does sound very beautiful, and I understand that you went really way back into your own history to come up with the anecdotes and the stories for it. So why did you make this album?
Because my father, who died 2 years ago, he was 94. He was writing an autobiography of himself, and it was so big, like it was, and he wanted me to read it all. And I read snippets, and I thought, that's not a bad idea, but I would never do that. I would do it in music. And I thought, I wanted to write about various stories that I'd experienced. I mean, I could have written probably 6 volumes of this, because I've got stories about fishing, encountering great white sharks, surfing, and lots of things like that. I mean, it would take for me to do that forever. But what I did is I took snapshots of what I thought was important, which is also including meeting my wife for the first time, the first kiss, meeting her at a disco. So we put that sort of disco beat sort of feel to it, you know, and I wanted to have different styles of music on this. That's why it's called Journey's Groove, because it has jazz, it has groove, it has soul, and it has world. I mean, New Beginning is about me starting a new life in Thailand. And the second to last song, called Show Me How, is about asking Sapatra, teach me the culture, teach me about Thailand, teach me. Which, while I'm on that subject, I'm writing a new album now. It's called Breaking Down the Barriers, but the concept behind that will be very big, bold, world progressive, very strong vocal. It's almost like Show Me How is the first stage where I've used Thai vocalists and I've sang Thai myself. Save Us, there's Thai vocalists as well.
Yeah, I saw.
So I wanted to use this format. Everybody knows that I do progressive music in whatever style, jazz. This year, with the releases of the Unitopias and having something a little different for the punter to listen to, maybe it's not their style of music, but everybody that has reviewed it already has already said that this is a really cool album. It's really nice, you know.
Yeah.
I mean, look up on the top of your right-hand corner up there with Steve Wilson. That was a pop album. I mean, it's not me copying him, but it's what we want to do. It's what we want to, the style of music that we want to present it in. It's still great music. You know, it doesn't mean because I'm not doing, you know, songs in 7 and 5 and all these different time signatures. It's also about, I mean, this is a good album to listen to when you're traveling around. Now, I suppose the other treat that I have coming will have, hopefully by October or November at the latest, is 7 Deadly Sins, which is a collaboration with Peter Lazar from Sweden.
Yeah.
And I wrote all the lyrics and I've wrote the vocal arrangements for this, and he's done the music with another guy who's involved. And it's basically telling the story of those deadly sins. And I've added an extra sin, which is not even existing, but I've done a format of all the different sins molded into one song. So this is a progressive. It's quite heavy in places. It's got some sort of metal type sounds, but it's quite good. And of course, I've written with Peter before because I did a track called Stabilization on the Hope album, UPF's Hope album. So that is a treat coming at the end of the year as well.
Wow, you got a lot of music coming up. You're very busy.
Yes, yes. I wish I was 25 years younger so I could go out and tour it all. But it is a lot of fun doing this and working on this new project now. Oh, and I'm doing some tracks for a good friend of mine who plays the bass on Go-Kart, Philip from France. He sent me 2 tracks yesterday and asked me could I put vocals and arrangements to it, and I said no problems, and he was quite surprised. And I said one of them he thought sounded a little bit like John Evangelis, and the other one sounds like Yes, because he's heavily influenced by John Anderson. So I said, yeah, sure, I could do this, but I would make it sound a lot more emotional to the idea that you have. And he said, oh, great, that's what I want, so that's what I'm going to do. So I'm doing bits and pieces for people as well, and that's a lot of fun.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's good to hear. Good to hear that is you're keeping yourself busy with a lot of music. I can understand you also still have a lot of work in your restaurant going on.
Yes,
how is that
we're
going
trying
so far?
I mean, we've been open since we've cleared the water, and I've spent a lot of my life savings on fixing things for the restaurant, but it's getting the people back. It's very quiet in Thailand overall, apart from the most obvious places like Phuket and that. But I'm in Udon Thani, which is north of Bangkok. It's about an 8-hour drive, and it's 1.5 million people, so it is a big city. When I say a city, but it's more like a country city, compared to Bangkok, Phuket, and Pattaya and those places, in Chiang Mai. So yeah, but I'm enjoying it here. I get a lot of solace. I relax. I'm in the gym every day as well, so it's not all music. I go to the gym from around 10:30. I come back out about 4 o'clock. So I'm in there a long time. I do the pool, and so I'm getting a lot of sun. So I'm trying to keep healthy because I want to be fit for next year.
So, I mean, it would be really nice to have another Unitopia tour, and I'll make sure this time I'm going to be there. I missed the one in 2023, unfortunately.
Well, you can experience it on the Blu-ray, and of course,
that's true.
You can see from all of us how much we are enjoying that show.
Yeah,
and
definitely.
Even though that Chester and I were in a lot of pain, Chester only came off an operation 6 weeks before we lobbed into Italy, and I can tell you, both of us were carrying that pain, but we love what we do. So Chester and I share each other's problems with regards. How's your back today? Oh yeah, it's not too bad. What about your back? Oh yes, that's all right. Baby. Of course, he wouldn't be speaking like that. He'd be speaking with an American accent. But
Of course.
yes,
Yeah.
but Chester's a lovely, lovely, lovely guy. Don and John, the bonding with us is wonderful. We had some wonderful times. We stayed at this amazing German. I suppose it's a hotel, but it was right in a valley. It was just incredible. Not far from where we played the next gig, which was at is it Affelberg? Afflestorm? No. What's the name? Affelberg. No. I can't remember. Anyway, it was a good gig there too. Each gig was full, except for Switzerland, because they had a change of management, and the new manager that came along knew nothing about us and knew nothing how to promote us. And there were many Swiss people who were disappointed because they didn't know,
Yeah.
which is sad. I mean, we thought we were only going to get 30 or 40. We ended up with about 120, but it could have been more like 400, you know.
Yeah.
But that's what happens sometimes.
All right. Well, it's
So that should give you something to use. If there's anything else, just let me know. I think Sean's got a Southern Empire album coming out, and John's already started work on his third solo album. And if you haven't got any of John's stuff, just write to him, and he gets great reviews. He's very good.
I'm really curious. I saw him. I was not familiar with him. I knew his name, but I was not familiar with his music. And I saw him on the footage of the Alive and Kicking Blu-ray. And I gotta say, an amazing player. But then again, all of you guys were amazing. So I'll definitely look into him.
Mean, a lot of people said to us, oh, you can't do it without Matt Williams, And of course, Matt had his commitments. And I thought that opportunity for John to come in was the best. And is like a sponge, and he has to be, being a doctor. He absorbs things very quickly, and he learns very quickly. He's learned how to use Pro Tools all with Sean over the last 5 years. And I can tell you that he hasn't turned back. He's just prolific. So, yeah, I'm very, very proud of John. Very, very good. And I'm proud of Don. Don's just a wonderful, wonderful human being. And also has gone through, similar to me, but 3 years ago, his house caught on fire and he lost his house in the bushfires in LA 3 years or 4 years ago.
Oh.
He's only just moved into his house. So, yeah, it's quite a thing, really.
It's been quite a thing indeed. Yeah, you experienced a lot, but translated all these experiences into some really beautiful music, which is really amazing. So thank you very much for your stories and the little bit behind the scenes of all the upcoming music. It's wonderful to hear. So thank you very much for your time and good luck with everything.
And thank you, all the listeners. And as Molly Meldrum would say in Australia, do yourself a favour, go out and buy those albums.